When I got off the plane in Midland, Odessa in 24, I was very thirsty. I was at one of our people's houses, and his teenage son was the only one there. And I went to get a drink of water from the sink. And, whoa, Billy, you can't do that. What do you mean? Why? I thought he was joking. So I said to him, well, I'm thirsty. Yeah, but you can't drink that water. Why not? We don't drink that water. That's the water we only use to wash dishes and cooking. That was in Odessa, the heart of the oil and gas industry. Everybody in Odessa buys bottled water, which I find to be so wasteful. There ain't no future out there unless we get ourselves together and fight back.
Welcome to Truth and Reckoning, a broadcast from CELDF. In this show, we'll learn from frontline organizers and communities fighting against environmental destruction. We'll explore different perspectives and innovative strategies for movement building, the potency and the potential of rights of nature, and effective action in defense of our communities. And we'll share inspiring stories of people working towards right relationship with the land and each other. I am your host, Max Wilbert. Hello, everyone. The interview for this podcast was conducted by Kai and Tish, who are both CELDF staff. It's an interview with the group Truckers Movement for Justice. Kai, why don't we start with you, and then to Tish, can you tell us a little bit about this conversation and why you thought it was important and noteworthy?
Yeah, I mean, from our context, it was just a really different kind of group to be working with. I mean, CELDF has predominantly been working with community-based community groups, and this is a group that is really a collection of people that are literally not just scattered around the country, but often just behind the wheels of their trucks. And so it was pretty cool to kind of talk with a group who is dealing with a lot of the same things that place-based communities are, in the sense of just the injustices happening, and then how you mobilize and how you be effective as a group. And so I think that's one of the things that we hope people take away from listening to this interview with the folks from Truckers Movement for Justice.
And Tish, I imagine you connected with them because one of the issues that has brought them together is hauling frack waste and other highly toxic material from the oil and gas industry, which you've worked on quite a bit as well, right?
Right. And Tom McKnight, who wasn't on this particular interview, me and Kai talked to him before, and, you know, he's actually got a lot of health issues. He's really suffering. So is Billy. I mean, and so it really brought it home. You know, these people actually are suffering with serious illnesses. Their lives may not, and they realize that, and they even talk about it, last that long. But what really hit me talking to them was, you know, like, we're always talking usually, like Kai said, to community groups and about environmental issues, and that idea that, you know, nature is being so impacted. And even in our democracy school, we talk about how, you know, capitalism needs two things, right? Resources, which come from nature, but the labor part. And we tended not to deal as much with the labor part. And I kept thinking about all the trucks, right, that we all see on the road every day. You know, and how these trucks, we don't think about it, but that's the labor part. They're carrying those things, and maybe even parts of things that get made into products. Mm-hmm. But the drivers themselves, I mean, I guess we don't give too much of a thought to that, but how, when I was growing up, truckers were really, you know, they had good jobs, right? Blue collar jobs. They had good benefits. They had all this stuff, and how that's just been so deteriorated over the years, and we don't even give a thought to it. Just like we don't think about, you know, the cell phone in our hand, like all the, you know, maybe forests cut down for the data center, or we don't think about the, you know, the mountains that are destroyed for the rare earth minerals or whatever. We also pass these trucks every day, and we don't even think about the people driving them. So yeah, it kind of was all this full connection of stuff that was interesting to me.
Well, it's a strong conversation. We'll learn about the history of their organization, the type of work that they do, coming out of a strike and labor organizing back in the mid 2000s, and now growing to a national organization with thousands and thousands of truckers and operators out there on the roads who are essentially part of this non-union activist group. Any final words?
Yeah, I think another kind of interesting thing that I hope people cue in on is, just from like an organizational standpoint, they're conscious of that they've got people who are older, on their way out, and sort of how you keep the movement going and how you have to kind of bring in and groom and support sort of the next generation of leaders. And so I thought that was very, very smart of them, and sort of being aware of that and putting active energy into it. Yeah, and just, I mean, they're a great bunch of people, just really solid people with, a large amount of fight in them, and then figuring out, how to be effective. And I think that's a universal thing. That's not just for the trucking community.
Mhm. And again, the organizing, I think, and how difficult it is, but they also realize that they work as individuals in their cabs of their trucks, right? But they realize that the collective, like they would have so much more power, like with this collective coming together, just like the environmental activists and all the other activists, social justice activists. And so to see that similarity, and in a different, I guess, area or topic area, it's kind of interesting. And I hope people make those connections too.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there's a long history in the environmental movement of not much connection with labor organizing and unions and workers, but where we have seen that happen, it's resulted in some very fruitful collaborations because, of course, workers have their hands on the levers of the machine and have access to exert power in these industries that those on the outside often do not.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, great interview. So hope you guys enjoy.
Well, thanks, Tish. Thanks, Kai. We'll get right to the interview.
Welcome, everybody, to CELDF's Truth and Reckoning podcast. We've got some great guests with us today from an organization called Truckers Movement for Justice. So joining us today is Ray Randel, also known as Hollywood, John Tyler, and Billy Randel, all members, and I think on the executive board for Truckers Movement for Justice. We asked you guys here today to kind of have our audience better understand what you guys are up to and how you guys came to be and what you're involved in these days. And I guess like anything, getting your take on kind of our world at hand as you guys see it very often from behind your windshields, which I think is a great and different perspective maybe than a lot of people get to see the world. And so from what we know about you guys, some super fascinating work that aligns a lot with what we are involved in as an organization, with a lot of frontline community efforts, whether it's on things that people consider to be more environmental, but also we've worked with communities dealing with hard economic issues as well as other social issues. And the big place that we usually land is, who's making the decisions about our lives? And is it us or is it somebody else? And if it's not us and we want to change that, what is it going to take? Which I think from our understanding of what you guys are involved in, it's a lot of that kind of advocacy work to really empower people more. And when you do that to the levels that I think you guys have been doing that, you start running into big structures that often try to deny you or dissuade you or oppress you in a way that keeps the status quo going and makes the fight even that much more difficult. But I know you guys got a lot of fight in you, and communities we work with are the same. So we're, again, excited to have you guys with us today. Tish, you and I were talking before we gathered here about sort of how even this connection was made, and just how interesting it is when you work with different people, ultimately from the standpoint of just really trying to do the right thing, how that opens up other opportunities to meet new people and people doing good work. And I think that's the case here, and getting a chance to sit down with Hollywood, John, and Billy today.
Yeah, thanks, Kai. And it is always really interesting because obviously when we heard about your group, Truckers Movement for Justice, it sparked our interest, because obviously we're an environmental law firm and you're not normally the people we're talking to. And so once we met Billy, the way we met Billy actually in your group is because us being an environmental law firm, we fought fracking here in Ohio and Pennsylvania quite extensively, worked with a lot of community groups fighting that issue, myself included in that. That's how I started in this work, was my community they started drilling. And I met Justin Noble. Justin Noble did a story on one of the communities we're working in Grant Township, Pennsylvania, and they were trying to stop a fracking well. And it led to me finding out in my community what they were doing with fracking waste. And I contacted Justin, which led him down the rabbit hole of writing the book, Petroleum 238. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that book that he wrote, but he says something at the beginning about an activist in Ohio that, called him about this issue. And that's how he got involved in the brine issue, which now has led Justin to introduce Billy and your movement to us. So, sometimes we can't plan exactly how these things all come about, and there's definitely a connection. And I think I would really like to just kind of start with you guys, how did you all meet each other? Because to me, a lot of this, we talk about getting in right relationship with other humans and with nature, right? And that involves a lot of relationship building. So I'm really curious how you guys met each other, how your group came together, and what's your story behind forming this organization that you're part of now. And any one of you can go first.
It's pretty simple with me. Back in, I guess it was April 2023. I've been driving a truck for almost 20 years, and for the first time, I thought it was about time to give it up. I mean, I was at the point where I could make enough money to buy fuel, and so I was watching YouTube, and there was a guy on there that was talking about a protest that was going to be May 1st of 23, and I screenshotted the permit that he had, where I could blow it up to see the phone number, and so I called the phone number, and Billy answered. So I mean, I was so desperate that I didn't know if this was even a real person, but I called him. He told me, "Yeah, we're gonna meet in DC May 1st." I still didn't know if it was real, and then until I saw him, then I was okay. Well, I guess it's real. And then I met Hollywood that day in DC, right in front of FMCSA, and some other people. Some I mean, I hadn't been in touch with. Well, I guess most of them, except Hollywood. Really haven't been in touch with the rest. So I mean, I would say it was 100% faith that I met the group almost 3 years ago.
I'm curious, what would you consider home base?
Mississippi.
Okay.
And I drove, I think it was like 800 and some miles off a piece of paper I saw on YouTube. And I had a daughter staying there, so I mean, that's kind of how I was like, well, maybe if this ain't real, then at least I guess I go see her, I guess. So, yep, and that's pretty much it for me.
Good story. Ray or Hollywood, you want to go next?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, mine is a little bit different. I was trucking out of Virginia. I was doing the port, doing containers, and I had stopped off at this truck stop to get some fuel. And as I was getting some fuel, this hippie-looking guy walked up to my truck, and he started talking and stuff. And so he was saying a few things that kind of made sense and stuff. So I go, I guess he's another trucker like I am, and he's saying things that piqued my interest. And it's kind of like after I got my fuel and pulled away from the pump and stuff, and everything, he asked me to come walk with him, and stuff. And we went and started walking around to other truckers, just talking with them and kind of find out they had going on in their situation, things that they were kind of upset about, things that they were hopeful to get changed or get better and stuff. And this was kind of like, I guess this was about 1999, 99, early 2000, that he met me on that. And it's kind of like from there, we got together for breakfast with truckers, luncheon, uh, cookout, and so forth. And we just started going around state, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, just trying to meet up with drivers to find out what their concerns were. And it's kind of like Billy and I got to talking, and we pretty much put on the table that truckers need a divorce because if I'm behind the wheel, I'm trying to make my living. I haven't got time to go to DC or South Carolina or Virginia when laws are being made about how I make my living. I need to be there, but I can't make money and be there at the same time. So we kind of throw things around and stuff and saying, hey, it came up that we need a board because JB Hunt, Snyder, all of them, they're gonna be there, but they're making money because they have trucking companies. We are independent drivers. There's nobody there to talk for us. There's nobody to put our concern on the table because these guys, they are trucking companies, but they are business people. They out to make money and they're gonna do their drivers pretty much whichever way that they want. But independent drivers are left out here to have to struggle for themselves and pretty much pick up the crumbs that are left when the meat is up on the table. But we just don't know how to get there or have anyone to go there to talk for us. So it's kind of like TMJ came in to be that voice because I sure enough was tired going in, getting one rate of what I was going to be paid. And then when I turned in my bills and stuff, they wanted to pay me at another rate that was lower. And I'm not a customer man, I'm not a violent man. But when you mess with my livelihood, I can get like Billy. And if you hear how he talks, you start messing with my livelihood, then we got a problem. And usually with that, when you start talking up for yourself, when you're just one person, they want to shove you to the side and go on to the next person that they can get over with. So we felt like, hey, TMJ need to be a force. That hey, but we're gonna try our best to make sure you get treated fair and just, and whatever you are supposed to be paid, that it comes to you full force. That's all that we ask. What is right? What is legal? Just do it. That's all you got to do. We're not asking for anything favorable. We just asking to just keep it on.
You know, you bring up a really interesting point and thing. I hadn't even really thought about that much before meeting Billy and like, you know, learning about you guys and even what you just said, Hollywood, because we work usually with community groups, right, that are in a place based, it's a single community and they need to organize, but it's like they're all right there, right? Like they have to put the effort in, but they could meet their neighbors, right? But it made me think about truckers, like you said, and you're all driving. So how do you guys even communicate with each other? Like you said, how difficult that was even just to, you know, connect with each other and communicate with each other. So I guess, yeah, that's a challenge I think that I hadn't thought about because you all are independent and working on your own and always going in different directions. You know, we also have in the communities too, we understand that going to Washington and even going to hearings and things like that, people, they usually hold them at the worst time, right? Even for other people who are working, like they're usually in the middle of the day and they'd have to take off work to go. And I mean, that's all intentional, but yeah, it's even harder for you guys because you could be very far away from, you know, where you need to be. So you have the logistics, I guess, part of it.
And Hollywood,
Billy,
I was going to say, Hollywood, when you met Billy, was TMJ already a group, or
No,
was it kind of the beginning days?
no.
Okay.
TMJ didn't come
Just
along not until sometime later. It may have been a year later, or we were just kind of throwing things out to see what would work. And
So it was kind of a small group of you just kind of having conversations with other
right,
truckers. Is that kind of how it got going? Okay.
and we had got invited to a cookout uh, by a trucker, and he had other truckers at this cookout. And we went there to hear them, to see what they had to say and what they were up against. And we kind of like we were talking with container drivers, log truck drivers at that time when we first started out. And we were in Little Washington, North Carolina. We were at the Golden Corral, and we had invited truckers there to come out to have a luncheon with us and just to talk. And we were standing out in the parking lot and looked like nobody was showing up. Nobody was coming. So we went in, sat down, and truckers kind of like started coming in little bit by little bit. And we got together with them. And after we got through with them, Billy and I kind of put our head together, and we started out with the idea and saying TMJ, say Truckers Movement for Justice. Um, Billy started on the paperwork to go ahead and get it where we'll be recognized that when truckers got with us, that hey, this was an organization that'll be here for you. We are not trying to make money off you. We are here to be the mouthpiece for you. What your concern is, tell TMJ, and TMJ will tell it to the organization or the people in government that are making the rules the way they could understand from the trucker's point of view.
What were those initial issues like that you had talked, let's say, to Billy about in those early days? Like, what were some of the specific things that
Money,
truckers were mentioning?
money, which is
Money.
still
Okay.
is the same thing right to this day. Drivers are out here working and making penny on the dollar. It's kind of like this way. If you're not making your money, you're not getting paid what you are supposed to be paid. Instead of you going home, being able to take your wife and family out to a restaurant for a night dinner out, is going out to a nice restaurant compared to going out and eating at McDonald's. If drivers were getting paid what they are supposed to be paid, they could have a nice dinner at a restaurant. They could have nice time home with their family. They could go out and buy brand new tires for their truck instead of buying recap or whatever. It's a world of difference. The money is out there, but when it got to go through two or three people before it gets to the one that is doing the work, and the one that is doing the work is the one that's getting the least amount of the funds that are being funded for the job. It just doesn't seem right. It doesn't look right. You know, I'm working each and every day, putting in 14-hour days, and I'm just barely making minimum wage. And I'm the one that got to take on pretty much all the headache because I got to get the product from A to B. The one that's sitting in the office getting paper cut, they're not needed, not really. But the thing about it, a driver cannot go and run down loads and turn around there and drive at the same time. So we try to get it there saying, hey, laws and stuff are on the book where, hey, truckers can't unionize. If we can't unionize, why can't we co-op? Co-op can go from company to company, independent to company drivers, to all put everybody under one roof. And then when the money comes down, the people that are going in the office that getting you loads, you're not working for them, they are working for you.
If you're operating off of contracts with specific companies and that they have provisions in there that may penalize you if you don't get shipments there on time? Or like, what are some of the things of which are keeping, I guess, your wages so suppressed as it stands today, and why things like co-ops can maybe be an answer for independent truckers like yourselves?
Well, it's really it's dishonest brokers. I mean, you got some brokers that pay well, but basically every load is a contract. But you sign a main contract with them. And that main contract, yeah, you got to be on time with your load. Some they require that you track. So basically, you give them access to your phone while you running the load. But it's mostly like dishonest brokers. And I mean, the industry is set up for big companies. It's not set up for little people. So like, just say like Hollywood talking about Snyder and JB Hunt. Well, they can go somewhere and they can get a set of tires. Let's say 8, 10 tires for $2,000. Well, it might cost me anywhere from 4 to maybe 5,000 for the same tires, only because they a bigger company, they get a bigger discount. Well, okay, so basically, as an independent with no contract, we basically just run the overflow. So now just say like if JB Hunt or Snyder got a load that they can't cover, well, the load may pay them 3,000, but then they have broke it out to us, get us to do the work. They just doing the paperwork, but they might have only broke it out to us for like whatever the spot market rate is.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes. So it's like, so all right. So now, if you got $3,000 that load paid you from your customer, you give it to us for 13, 1,400. You just made 1,600 off the paperwork, but basically just send it to me. And I done the work. I dealt with the customer with the bad attitude on both sides. I dealt with the rude truck drivers. But I mean, they just sent me a piece of paper and they made 1,600. And I mean, I didn't make it to something that the kid was having at school. I didn't make it to somebody's funeral. I didn't. I couldn't make none of this. But they made $1,600 for sending me a piece of paper with some addresses on it.
Hmm. And they sitting back in an air conditioned heated office. As John
But
was just talking about, we have had to deal with that. With me, I have been a truck driver for over 20 some years. I have did pretty much everything from dry van to containers to reefer units. Um, been through a tanker. Most of the things I've seen and have been out there on the road. And like I said, it's kind of a shame that I had to go in and argue about my money. When the bill of lading come out, most drivers now do not ever see this. They get told a price. The bill of lading says what the load pay. But drivers out here now, they don't see that. Just like what I said, the load could pay $3,000, but the broker tell us it pays 13, 1,500. Right off the top, he gets that $1,500 to himself. On top of that, he tells us that 1,500, we're going to get 90% of it. So he's going to take away again from the 1,500. Let me give you one more on this. Each load pays a fuel surcharge. It could be 10%, 20%, whatever. This is paid on what the load costs to move. And the load was at $3,000. They tell us that it's on $3,000 at 20%. They give it to us that the load is $1,500 and it pays 5% of the 1,500. So again, drivers are getting cheated out of money. It's their money. It is due to them, but it does not happen that way. TMJ is still there to try to keep it honest. If the load paid $3,000 and it's $3,000 to the driver, to the truck, pay the $3,000. If it's a 20% surcharge on the $3,000, pay the 20% on the $3,000 to the driver.
Had and back and like I say, it's all about dishonest brokers. I had a broker one time. I get to the shipper 15 minutes late. He said that I had to be there at 1 o'clock. So I got there at 1:15. Well, the load didn't pay but about 1,700 on, I don't know, right up 700, 800 miles. Well, because I got there, okay, I got there at 1:15, 1:13. Well, he said I had to be there the next day. I picked it up on Wednesday. He said I had to be there Thursday. I said, okay, Thursday at 5 o'clock. So I get there Thursday at 5 o'clock, and I find out my appointment ain't till Friday at 5 o'clock. Okay, so now he charged me $150 for being 15 minutes late, but I can get nothing for being 24 hours early. So I mean, it's like I say, it's mostly just dishonest people. Yeah.
So what does that look like for you guys over the years, trying to build, more solidarity amongst independent drivers, to do the advocacy work based on, the stories that you just told, John, and the stories you told Hollywood? Like, are you gaining momentum? Is it what have been the challenges? What have been the kind of the successes
Still
in
pulling teeth.
kind of building solidarity, building the organizing? Again, especially since you guys are, your job is literally about moving from place to place. And as Tish pointed out, you're not all physically together. So that kind of physical mobilization is often very difficult. But, how has it looked in sort of building support? What have been the ways that you've sort of changed the reality of getting people to be, in your words, John, more honest? Has that worked, sort of taking that cooperative model or something along those lines? Give us some sense of what's been happening with you guys through TMJ.
It's still
Well,
pretty much.
what I do now, you
Go
go.
ahead, John.
What I meant, like, as far as like the broker part of it, I've been working with the same broker now for probably about, if they got to work, I've been working with the same broker since 2019, 17. So I done built a relationship with this broker, and some stuff happened with the original firm. So some of these people went out and started their own broker firm. It's called Hula Transportation. So I do real good as long as they got work, or I'm willing to travel to where they got work at. So I mean, to me, it's building relationships. Like to grow TMJ, like I say, I'm really kind of new to it, but most drivers, I meant, like the way Hollywood talk about how they human Billy talk back in the day. Oh, drivers don't do that no more. It's all about, I mean, like a lot of drivers, like, I mean, it's no, I guess, unity, because it's
Togetherness.
like everybody for itself now, and it's like it's nothing like what Hollywood was just talking about with him and Billy. Oh, nah, you can't. Nah, it don't work like that no more. And drivers don't stick together no more. They don't help each other. So that don't help it neither.
It is still pretty much out here a dog eat dog world. Just as John was talking about, drivers are not like we were back in the day, that we got to work together. If we work together, we can make together. Billy and I have been out to places talking with drivers, and we have had drivers, we try to tell them what we're there for and what we're trying to do for them. And drivers come out basically and tell us, I don't need nobody to talk for me. You don't need nobody to talk to you. Okay, so how do you get your boys over to your senator, your congressman, to DOT? Uh, how do you manage that? You know, you don't know nothing about that. Well, how are you making it better for you? Well, don't worry about me. You worry about. So those are kind of one we just kind of walk on from, and we try to build relationship with truckers and let other truckers go and tell other truckers about us. We make it that, hey, what you see is what you get. If you go up online and you pull up TMJ, this is TMJ. This is what we are about, and we stand behind our word. Because as we said, we're there to talk for you, not to turn around there to line our pocket, but to help you get your money in your pocket, help you to get a better life for you and your family, to get a better life for the community that you live in. That's all we're trying to do. And if people will be
But
honest,
you know,
go ahead, John.
Can I
you go on.
interject and just tell a little story here, if you don't mind? I'm I'm an old war horse, an old lion, and after 55 years of doing this, we tell stories. So I'm gonna give you all a story from the old days, and then I'm gonna give you one from the new days that includes one of our brothers here. Long time ago, there was a meeting. It was a safety meeting back around about 2008 in Vanceboro, North Carolina. It was during the organizing down there among the log truck drivers. The safety meeting was being held at the largest paper mill in the world, Weyerhaeuser. And the safety manager was talking to the truck drivers, and at the end of his little speech, cheerleading speech, he turned around to them all and he said, "By the way, boys, how y'all like that safety bonus y'all get paid every month?" Nobody answered, but a big guy stood up, really big guy. In fact, they called him Big Dog, DAWG. That was his CB handle. And he said, "Mr. Boss Man, we like it just fine, but we never get it." The next week, every truck driver in Eastern Carolina that was pulling for Weyerhaeuser received a safety bonus just because of one driver, Big Dog, who was part of the organizing. Now, John, sorry, now comes your turn. On May Day 23, Brother John, he drove all the way from Mississippi in his car on his own dime, stayed at his daughter's, as he said earlier, called me at 6 o'clock in the morning. "Billy, cops all over the place." I said, "Yep." I said, "They're going to be there. Don't worry about it. It's all going to be all right." He says, "You sure? There's an awful lot of them. I never seen so many cops in one place." We pulled up, and drivers started trickling in, drivers and some supporters. I didn't even know who John was. Didn't know what he looked like. But a short fella came over to me at some point during that morning, and he was holding a homemade sign. I forget what the sign said, but I know I have it on one of the photographs that was taken there. And I met John Taylor. John Taylor is now TMJ's vice president. And we're proud because anybody got that kind of heart. That's what we are. We organize one truck driver at a time. And I'll give you one more little tale. I made a comment on a Facebook group years ago, back during the first year of the resurgence in 21. And a guy came back to me and he said, "You know, Billy, I want to wish you good luck." Organizing truck drivers is harder than herding a bunch of feral cats. I still use that to teach us what we're up against is not just the devastating corruption between government at all levels and the industry, but we're up against ourselves, like Hollywood and John said, because we did this to ourselves. And now I'm going to shut up and let my brothers talk because I'm liking what they're saying.
The things you said, and I'm like, it really hit me hard, was, this, how truck drivers are all like kind of out for themselves and individual. And I keep thinking, like, we talk to communities and it's all about the strategy of, when we say they, we mean like the powerful, the people with the power and the money, right? That's what they do, that divide and conquer strategy. And this whole idea, we talk about community rights, and it's about, the good of the collective versus the good of the individual. And so we keep hearing these same things, like a lot of what you're saying is resonating, even though it's different, it's the same, right? Like the challenges that we face in organizing and doing that. And it's like, we have to, how do we change that mindset of people to think about the collective? And I think of my own personal knowledge and what I thought, about truck drivers, just from my experiences. And like I said, I mean, my dad was in a union when I grew up, but, always thinking that the truckers were unionized. And so that they had all these great benefits, and that slowly that must have been eroded, because I'm curious what percentage anymore, just estimating, of truckers are part of a union versus individuals like you guys trying to make a living on your own.
I'll answer that if y'all don't mind. Up until 1980, the standard for blue collar wages were truck drivers. Everybody, factory workers, even construction to a certain extent, looked up to truck drivers. We were heavily unionized thanks to the vision that James Riddle Hoffa had from his early years and the Teamsters. Unfortunately, there was also a tremendous level of corruption from the very onset of trucking back in the 20s and teens of last century, always. And the union was riddled with corruption and very mobbed up. When deregulation took place, the union had just become basically a donation box to the mob. The incompetent leadership at both local and international levels was not ready for what was going to happen. What we call the legacy carriers and the hub and spoke system that existed back in those days lent itself to what we call double breasting operations. In other words, a union carrier like Yellow would set up a non-union company, and all new contracts and accounts would go to the non-union company, while the union company would have less and less workers until it ceased to exist. Fast forward slowly over the 80s and early 90s, the union's agreement with the industry, known as the National Master Freight Agreement, became nothing more than a paper tiger. Went from covering 500,000 workers to covering less than 40,000. And a lot of that took place because owner ops began being able to get into the industry, independence for another word. And as the nature of any business is, you're hustling to make a living. In some cases, you're also undercutting established businesses. Brokers came into play, freight brokers and freight forwarders, in a big way, basically took over the shipping aspect of it as the corporations took over the industry. And lo and behold, what happened? The working conditions became akin to sharecropping in the old days over the last 45 years. It's a very well known fact, even admit for inflation. Our working conditions Well, now John works for himself. He's a legitimate owner-op. All right. So he tries to schedule his home time fairly often so he can be with his family. But you take the lion's share of folks, they're out 5 weeks, 8 weeks, some as long as 6 months. I've been out on the road 6 months at a time. Hollywood knows that. All right. Because I won't go home. There's no way to go home. There's no money. I can't make a living if I'm home. We, as drivers, have the ability to bring any country's economy to its knees. Instead, what are we doing? We're on our knees begging for pennies. John's tale about the 30 hours and 51 minutes that he stood waiting, he was not compensated for that time, but he's going to be, because we have given it to our attorneys to file a lawsuit. Okay. One of our lawyers, even when John first was telling us the day it was happening, one of our lawyers even said, they're holding you against your will. You're not allowed to leave. And I remarked, they kidnapped my goddamn vice president? Is shit going to hit the fan at this point? Excuse my language, everyone, because I know we're recording, and this is for public consumption. All I can tell you is this. There was a time when we were looked up to. Now you go into McDonald's and you tell a McDonald's cashier that you're a truck driver, they laugh at you and say, oh, I make more money than you. And it's true. I'll shut up again.
A couple things I found interesting, just, and maybe you guys have discovered this too as you're talking with people in the industry and outside the industry, but so many parallels to what others have gone through, right? I mean, the realities, conditions, the stories may be different, but the method of oppression, the method of separation, the means of keeping workers down, it's the very often, the right to work laws that you may have seen, those aren't really right to work. They're rights to make work that much more difficult, right? They're means of making sure that wages are suppressed. They're means of making sure that they don't need cause for termination. So it's all means to kind of control labor, because that's what the corporate industry needs to do, right? It needs to keep resources cheaply, and it needs to keep labor cheaply in order to maximize profit for the shareholders. So, we're all part of that greater machinery, where you guys are one sort of gear and others are another kind of gear. But I also like Billy's thinking too, because we start working with communities about how do you confront systems of power. Well, you got to find means of actually gumming up the works, and literally you guys can gum up the works if you're organized, just like we talk about with communities being organized. They can be highly disruptive if they so want to, but that's also back to the cultural stuff you guys were talking about. How do you build unity? How do you build solidarity in an industry where there's so much about meism? And of course, in our society, it's a lot about me. Social media doesn't help with that. The consumerist culture doesn't help with that, because everyone's just trying to feed their own ego, basically. This may come out a little bit aside from where our conversation has been, but this came out in conversations that Tish and I had with Billy and Tom McKnight previously. But Tom told a pretty compelling story, very sad story about his own reality of his own health being where it's at, very likely because of job conditions being unhealthy, environmentally speaking. He talked about being on the oil fields there in Texas, and most likely the cancer he's dealing with came from that exposure. So I'd be curious, in each of yours moving about and talking with people, I mean, wages and money, clearly it's something that you can find immediate, I'm assuming, connection with other drivers with, but what's it been like to talk about other realities of what you guys as truckers are facing, including the environmental impacts? Has that been something which people have been receptive to talk about? Is that still a difficult thing? Like, how has that moved over the years? And where are people at in your world, seeing that these things actually all come together, right? The roads all meet, the money just doesn't sit here, and the social stuff doesn't sit there, and the environmental stuff doesn't sit over here. It all converges. So I'd be curious at like what your experience has been, and are you seeing people making connections maybe they didn't make 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Some, some.
Y'all want me to deal with that one?
You can, but I have an illustration to give to him. Why he's asking about there is just like the coal miners in Virginia. They believed that they had a good job, that they made good wages, but working in those mines were killing each operator that was there. Black lung, hey, they looked at it that they had a job and this job paid them, but this job was killing them. Truckers, same thing, are going through the same thing today. With this fracking that going on in the industry, it's not safe, it's not good, but drivers, hey, it got to be moved, and they go ahead and do it because they're driving. Their help get bad, they get canceled. When they get canceled, the company, all they try to do is move them off to the side. They got that somewhere there. They didn't get it from here. You know, instead of shifting the blame, instead of stepping up and doing right by the driver. Hey, stuff still goes on. Okay, Bill, it's yours now.
The same time Brother John got in touch with us in 23, that's when the organizing began in the Permian Basin of West Texas. We got calls from drivers out there, asked us to come help them, told us some serious horror stories. Memorial Day weekend that year, I drove our truck, because me and Hollywood were joint owners, out there, and I had a meeting with about 25 drivers. Didn't know anything about what they were doing, knew they were running the oil fields, knew something about fracking, didn't like what I had heard. Um, First thing I said to him, what y'all hauling? Frac sand. I said, frac sand contains silica dust. That's silicosis, that black lung. Y'all ain't got no PPE? No. Why not? That's how we began to learn what was going on in the oil and gas industry. We knew about the coal industry. Tyler knew about that. I knew about that from my days in the 70s down in Appalachia. All right. Arguably, the oil and gas industry and the mining industries are two of the most powerful industries in the world, albeit perhaps even the most powerful. I can tell you over the last 2.5 years, what we've seen make some of the horror stories OTR drivers and other truck drivers are faced with every day. Because you got drivers work in this industry that can't use a restroom, they can't go to the bathroom, they ain't got no home to live in. The industry has brought back company towns. They call man camps now, where drivers and oil field workers live. And they love it when there's rampant drug use because it keeps the workers happy because they're stoned or drunk. They ain't going to ask for no money. They're falling down drunk. Certainly ain't going to organize because they ain't even thinking that way. You see these man camps in Ohio, Pennsylvania, the Bakken oil fields in North Dakota, West Texas, New Mexico, South Texas. We went backwards because we didn't learn from our history as workers. Now, just like we had back in the 1800s and the early 1900s. We got company towns now, and they control everything. Right up here where I am in West Virginia, aside from the coal industry, fracking is big time up here. They're fracking the hell out of this land. The tri-state area in the Ohio Valley look like Swiss cheese. They pop holes in people's backyards, blowing methane in the air, young kids breathing this shit, kids getting sick, and they don't give a shit. They violate laws, they get fined, they don't pay the fines. In fact, this senator from West Virginia, Jim Justice, he's a big one. His minds are all full of environmental rule fines. He ain't even paying them. And he's a senator. You go into PA, it's even worse. Ohio's pretty bad too. Got a state senator up there that turned around at the community meeting in Marietta over fracking wells and said, "Oh man, you get more radiation from eating a banana."
I've heard
Son of
that
a
one
bitch.
before.
Yeah, son of a bitch.
Or a chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah. You know what I say? Me and Hollywood have an long saying. Hey, y'all, meet TMJ. You won't like us because we don't play. We're a different kind of an organization. Part labor union, part old-fashioned Southern Church revival meeting, part community organization, and a bunch of old lions and young lions that are ready to roar and take over the jungle.
I
And we're
love that.
ready.
I love that. You know, Billy, you said something else, and people, I think there's this fracking. Obviously, they know a lot about that issue right now in the waste. But I was thinking there's so many other things that people don't think about. Like one of the things when a site is polluted, like I'm in Ohio, and there's also Ashtabula, and Union Carbide was here, and that super fun site in Ashtabula, and it's like fenced off, but it's always like we have to clean it up. Right, we have to clean the site up. Well, normally what they do, or what happened in East Palestine, Ohio, right, with that train wreck, that was highly toxic stuff. And it's like, well, oh, we're just going to put it in trucks and we'll move it somewhere else, right? We'll move it to a landfill somewhere else. But it's the truckers that are doing that moving. And so there's so many toxic chemicals. It's not just from fracking. So many industries produce this toxic waste. Nuclear, look at the nuclear industry, and they ship that stuff in trucks many times to waste sites from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Trucks. Ship it all in trucks if it's allowable under DOT rules, and DOT does not enforce their hazardous material transport rules, which is what we're battling about in the fracking industry now. We're calling out the feds and the states over the fact that the drivers running this stuff ain't got hazardous material endorsements on their licenses. They're not even supposed to be running this stuff. They don't know anything about it. Oh, they say, "Oh yeah, we know it's radioactive. We're careful." No, man, you ain't careful. You're wearing street clothes. You got a shower facility where you work. You need to be taking a shower before you go home. You got a dosimeter on your chest. When I was out just before my heart attack last year, when I was out with our boys in Texas, I was handing out flyers at the truck stops in one of our stomping grounds in Kermit, Texas. And I noticed monitors on a bunch of the drivers. I knew what those monitors were. They're for H2S, a deadly gas that's associated with the oil and gas industry. Knock down an elephant in 2 seconds if it breathes it. So I asked Marco, one of TMJ's people, I said, "Marco, what's that the drivers are wearing?" He said, "H2S monitors, Billy. They've been giving them to us now." I said, "Since when?" "Since the convoy last year." I said,
Mm.
"Nice, nice. You see, there ain't many of us, but we're creative. That's how we come across y'all."
So I get that's actually a good lead into what I was just thinking, which is you obviously have a certain community, a certain family of people out there that you're connecting with and advocating for, and trying to grow your family there in the world of those that are in the same line of business as independent truckers. And I found it very impressive too that you've assimilated in things beyond kind of the normal, worker rights that we talked about at the beginning of the conversation here. The idea of pay. You've much more expansive than just this idea of being paid fairly and properly and justly and adequately, which of course is a nationwide struggle. But what are some of the things that you guys have found in your own organizing, your own conversations that you think are messages that apply to anybody anywhere? Because we're all running up against a very controlling system, a very oppressive system, a very corporatized system. What are some of those kind of messages that promise or success of any kind, whatever it may look like, that you would tell others out there doing their kind of advocacy work, that you would want to share here based on your own experience in your particular world?
I would like to go first, but I'd like to ask Hollywood and John to also say their thoughts. All right. When I got off the plane in Midland, Odessa in 24 from Mexico, I was very thirsty. So I was at one of our people's houses, and his teenage son was the only one there. And I went to get a drink of water from the sink. And, whoa, Billy, you can't do that. What do you mean? Why? I thought he was joking. I thought he was saying, no, I ain't going to let you have a drink of water. So I said to him, well, I'm thirsty. Yeah, but you can't drink that water. Why not? We don't drink that water. That's our water we only use to wash dishes and cooking, take a shower. That was in Odessa, the heart of the oil and gas industry. The water was poisoned. Everybody in Odessa buys bottled water, which I find to be so wasteful. Truck drivers are not tree huggers, as environmentalists are commonly referred to in a negative sense by people like us. But you know what? Right now, when Tyler Roberts, who I wish had been on tonight, turns on the faucet in his house in McDowell County, West Virginia, the water comes out black. He's got a young son, 10-year-old daughter. He needs water to drink. Clean water. John, go ahead. You up.
One thing I do,
Then
I mean, I got people I grew up with. Yeah. I mean, I just keep trying to talk to people because I met the people that I can, but I got people like that I grew up with that they don't believe in what I'm doing. So I mean, so it's like and I got a cousin. I told him about the organization. And he thought it was a joke. He thought me coming to Washington in 23 was a joke. Man, what you go up there for? Yeah. I said, well, a good thing always started somewhere. I said the Teamsters had to quit because when they was early on, it wouldn't be a Teamsters now. They the biggest union in the country. I said, so good things do start off small. That man, I might have got his attention, maybe not enough attention to get him to join, but I mean, I say because truckers, they're some of the worst people to deal with. It is probably for me, it's hard, but I mean, I gave a guy Billy's phone number that was right there, right beside me, when I was down in Florida for them 30 hours. Billy said he never heard from him. So I don't know. I just keep trying, and hopefully, I think when I used to work at a plant, I'll plant manager say if you keep throwing frogs at the wall, at some point something gonna stick. So, man, that's all I just pretty much keep telling people about TMJ.
That's fun, John, because must be a Southern saying. Because I'm a half Italian, and that was always you throw spaghetti on the wall, and eventually some of it'll stick. So,
Oh, maybe, maybe. But I heard that one. I heard that one, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it's just northern, southern, same meaning, different thing. Sorry, Hollywood, go ahead.
Uh, no, y'all good. But pretty much what it is, TMJ is here to present the facts. We're not going to try to throw you a line to get you. You're either going to be or not going to be. Um, we're going to do what we can to help. And for those ones that are the doubting Thomas, uh, you just got to keep on going along and let them and pray that hopefully they'll see it. Or that somewhere down the line, something comes good to them and then they realize or hear from someone that TMJ helped get us. You know, just like we have truckers in the port. It used to be that when we went into the port, you didn't have any place to go and use a restroom. You couldn't get out in your truck to go inside the building to use it. That was unauthorized. You had to be in your truck, and you could be inside the port for 4, 6, 8 hours, and you have nowhere that you can go and relieve yourself. And you sure enough better not get outside your truck and try to do it, because then MPs will be hauling you off and impounding your truck. Our members, one of our members, turned around there and put up a proposal to Congress, and that now that across the country, truckers, when they go into the port, they have a right to use restrooms. None of them think about this or whatever, and most likely they don't even think about it. But this was TMJ and TMJ membership that pushed this to get done. So my part is to say we have the doubting Thomas, but TMJ keep plucking right on along. We're going to keep presenting the facts, and we're going to keep on our government to enforce rules that are on the book to help each and every driver that is out here. All you need to do, all they need to do, is get up off their behind and do what is right to be done, what is the law to be done, and things will get better. But uh, it's like pulling teeth and pulling teeth out of a grizzly bear at that.
I don't know this, but Billy and Hollywood been retired for years. Billy, I think, just recently retired, and they still in the fight. And I mean, they got a lot of appreciation and respect from me for that, because I mean, they could dust their hands and move on. But I think Billy, he just like to fight, so he ain't gonna do it. But it's like, I mean, they don't have to fight this fight. But Hollywood, he got the dedication, and Billy just like, oh, and so. But I always want to thank him for that.
We want to thank you, Brother John.
Thank you, John.
We
Thank
want
you.
to,
And
Tish
I
and I want
think
to thank the three of you guys, Hollywood, John, and Billy, for making the time. Is there any specific websites or social media locations or emails or anything that you guys want people to know about how they can get in touch with you?
you have a book page, Truckers Movement for Justice. Um, there is a website being created. It'll be a very unambitious one because we don't really know how to do that stuff and we don't put much stock in it. Um, let's see. Hell, just Google the name Truckers Movement for Justice. You're going to find out how to get to us. But the email address is solidarity0501@gmail.com. And you can reach us by phone at 845-768-0416. And just keep one thought in mind. There ain't no future out there. unless we get ourselves together and fight back.
Amen.
And it's not going to be just a political fight. It's an economic fight. We need to do something. Native Americans, indigenous peoples have a legend, and we've spoken about this publicly many times. It's called the 7 generations. Look back 7 generations and learn in order to go forward and make sure the next 7 generations have a sustainable life. That's what we're doing. That's what this fight is all about. And we ain't gonna stop. Not this time.
All right, we'll hold
This
you.
time,
We're gonna hold you to it.
Yeah.
oh, we've been through a lot.
Please do.
Brother Hollywood, myself, Brother John, so many more of us. We've been through a hell of a lot. And as I always point out to Hollywood, damned organization's still standing. And that's because there's a hand in front of us. It's invisible, but we can see it.
We have a lot more in common. Yeah.
It's just guiding us. We're supposed to be doing this. You're right, John. Hollywood and me can be sitting under the carport in Carolina.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
As well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to thank you for listening to our show and let you know a few ways you can support Truth and Reckoning. First, share this broadcast with your friends and family. Leave a positive review via your podcast app. Visit the Truth and Reckoning YouTube channel and leave a thumbs up and a comment. The full scope of the work of CELDF, including this show, comes with a financial cost. So if you're able to make a donation, go to CELDF.org. That's CELDF.org. But most importantly, our goal for this show is to empower you to take action. So the best way you can show your support is to get involved with your community and protecting the place where you live. Thank you very much.